All right. It looks like we're live. I think we're live. I know I am alive. So then I think we're all good. I think we have all the check marks of a successful live stream. Given that we're live and I am indeed alive for now. Anyhow, welcome. Hat chat number 17. Wow. Wow. Again, I literally just started. I had no idea that I was going to be able to rattle off, um, you know, 16 episodes already in this short time period that I've managed to have this series. But yeah, it just goes to show you that uh, your boy Luke here has been full of energy and eager to share some of that energy with you fine folks um, each and every morning. Um, Again, I caution that that may not last forever. It may not even last until next week. I mean, I'm just unfortunately, you know, happen to be a fellow human, and my energy levels do wane. Um, but it's been a really great blast, man. Uh, I got to tell you, it has been really fun to interact with a lot of my fellow hat nerds. Uh, here and again, it's only been a handful, but that is quite okay. I am happy to share and to do even a monologue. I think I basically did a monologue the very last show where I featured my D Bar J. Carmen San Diego inspired fedora. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That hat is a lot of fun. Um, like I said, it really reminds me of something that would go along with like a zoot suit, right? Um, and like it really like takes me back. It just feels like the movie The Mask when you put it on. So regardless of how you feel, I just don't feel that you can be a curmudgeon and wear that hat. If you are, then you put it on and you'll transform like Jim Carrey into The Mask. I don't know if I had that much energy yesterday. I just feel like my voice is still recuperating. Luckily, um, yesterday I did not attend the baseball game. I did watch and even started live streaming the Mets game yesterday, and be happy to report for those that might that give a hoot. The Mets did win 12-7 over our division rival, the Atlanta Braves. Shout out to the Braves. The Braves have had a really tough season, but it's a great baseball town and a great organization. Lots of great players played for the Braves. Hank Aaron is the one I immediately think of when I think of the Braves. And obviously, a lot later, you had Chipper Jones, and then you had the big three, right? The big three: Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, and John Smoltz. And then you had Steve Avery on that. That was really the big four that the the dynasty of the 90s, right? Very similar to the Mets dynasty of the 80s, in that I think they only won one championship throughout that run, but they were perennially contenders, perennially in the playoffs. And I think they only rattled off one championship, but that was a great team. Shout out to the Braves of the 90s. Uh, and uh, and and the current Braves, even though they're on, they kind of had a really big down year compared to the expectations. Um, Mets have also kind of like now in their current form, they start off really strong and again, a better team on paper, but that's baseball, right? That's why you play the games, right? Everybody has their favorites that they think are going to win it all. And the Mets were in that discussion, obviously the Dodgers. Uh, but you still got to play 162 games and make the playoffs. And then besides making the playoffs, right, you have to make an extra run, right? There's teams like the Mets last year that surprise everybody. They sneak into the playoffs and surprise everybody. And you start thinking, hey, they could win it all, right? It's like the Cinderella team. I think that's what they refer to it as, the Cinderella teams. And you got to love it, right? And it's analogous to like the Final Four, like the brackets, the NBA, NCAA brackets in basketball, where you have these Cinderella teams, right? I think I remember George Mason, my alma mater, George Mason here in Fairfax, Virginia, I think it was 2004, went on a Cinderella run where they actually made it into I think they made it to the finals that year. It really changed the school and put us on the map. And everybody was excited about that. I think Larinaga was the coach of that. And he went on to get coach Miami. It was really big for the school. All the folks that attended George Mason were really excited about, our Cinderella story. Unfortunately, we ran into a buzzsaw in Florida, and they deserved it. They were a much better team, but George Mason was playing that old school basketball, passing the ball. It was really fun to watch. Shout out to George Mason, the Patriots. Shout out to Florida. And anybody that's a sports fan, I mean, again, everybody has their individual sports. I just happen to love baseball, and also MMA more than anything. Hey, Ian, no worries. No worries. Thank you for popping in and dropping a comment. I was just getting a little bit on a tangent. My voice is still recuperating from my week of baseball here. But I had one evening away from attending a game. So hopefully, over a course of a couple days, I'll get my voice back to full strength. But I couldn't leave you guys without a hat chat. Like I said, I do this for me first, only because I love it so. And if folks come in, like Ian is a regular now. Again, I appreciate it, Ian. You don't need to give me, just FYI, I don't want it to become an obligation. If you become a regular, I don't want you feel obligated to come and listen to me. I'm just tickled that you even think that to come on here. Everybody has a bunch of stuff they have on their plate. It is the weekend, right? So I don't know how it is in London, Ian, but it is beautiful here in the DC metro area. We had a really dreary week, even though we managed to dodge the rain. But today, the weather gods have shone on us, and instead of shunning us, they've shone on us. That's what I meant to say. And they gave us some beautiful weather. I think we're about 70 degrees right now. So shout out to the weather gods, right? This is gonna help me get on my walk. I didn't take a walk this morning because I was kind of busy preparing for today's show. But I will get out there for a walk before I eat. And I haven't eaten. I did not eat yet anything today. I don't know if you guys know this. I might have mentioned it on a one of my rants that I'm always going on my tangents. But I'm somebody that likes to fast. I got away from it and gained a bunch of weight back, but I lost a lot of weight doing intermittent fasting. And again, I'm no doctor, I'm no physician. Please don't take anything I say here as health advice or anything about how you should run your life. But I'm somebody that used to weigh 300 pounds. And I lost a lot of weight with a combination of kind of a keto, more protein-based diet, as well as walking, and intermittent fasting. I think that was kind of like the big three that was responsible. Ian says it's 72 degrees here today. Hey, that's about the same we have here. That's funny, right? We have about 70 degrees. It'll go up to the 80s according to my weather forecast. But you know what? You got to take advantage of that stuff. Like the kids say these days, it's a great day to go out there and touch grass, right? I may be a little bit up there in age, but I try to keep up with what the kids are saying, only because again, I want to appeal. And first of all, it keeps you young, I think. I love language, even if that includes slang. It's one of those things about communication, right? The whole purpose of communication is to convey a message. But also in the conveyance of that message, you kind of look for like, it's not just what you say, it's also how you say it, right? They call that the language of denotation, and you compare that to the language of connotation, right? There's denotation and connotation. So there's what you say and how you say it, and part of how you say that is the specific words, right? It's kind of like the interplay between the both. and the specific words that you use. So you kind of like want to kind of build that connection. That's why kids use slang. It's kind of like, hey, you're part of the secret club, right? That uses this kind of phrasing, and you build that rapport with the receiver of your message. And sometimes it doesn't work out, right? You think you say a slang word and you think it's going to come across great to the intended audience, but they're like, what? What are you saying? I had that happen last night. I was doing a live stream, which I basically couldn't finish yesterday. I was doing a live stream for my Mets channel, and I do have a Mets channel. I started off doing Mets and hats here on this channel, and then I realized those two audiences are probably very different. So I went and started a dedicated Mets channel, and I started trying to do a live stream yesterday. And then we had a rookie pitcher that was up on there, and then I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I said, "Wow, Nolan McLean shoved today," and he was like, "What? Shoved?" I was like, "Yeah, he shoved," and my buddy Phil had no idea what that meant, and basically it wasn't really a generational slang. It was essentially a baseball specific slang. So people that kind of that are really into baseball and probably have played baseball. Again, I never really played organized baseball, but my son played at the high school level. And he had a chance to play at the collegiate level, but it didn't work out. But essentially, when you had a pitcher that was dominating, right? If you're watching the game and you're in the dugout, you're watching him. He's like, that guy is shoving on the mound, meaning he's dominating. Or after he pitches, he's like, man, he shoved tonight. So that when McLean's our rookie pitcher on the Mets, and he went and dominated again. Actually, even more so than his first start. We just brought him up, and he shoved. So I told my buddy Phil, and he was like, "What? What does that mean?" And he started laughing, and I just had to explain the term to him. So you see, communication. Slang goes by any different terms. It's not just generational. It's sometimes subculture specific, and and I'm sure in our hat subculture, we have our own terms. I can't recall what they might be, but it when you see it. You're like, okay, these are kind of terms that are used by fellow hat nerds, and they might not mean anything to somebody outside of that subculture. It's a way to kind of like communicate with our own tribe. Yeah, London has a lot of. I'd imagine. Again, I've not made it to your great city, Ian, but what I do know of London is that you guys, kind of like New York, are very diverse. So I got to imagine with that amount of diversity that you have in London, right? So I know that there's a lot of Arabic influence. There's a lot of Indian from India influence. There's also a lot of Polish influence happening in London. It's one of those meccas in Western Europe that you're going to have a lot of folks going there because, one, they're seeking opportunity, and you get a cultural exchange. Again, whether you're happy about it, whether people are happy about it or not, you're going to have to kind of deal, because essentially what happens is, a lot of folks, they might have like a Polish handyman, right? That's a lot of the Poles that migrated or immigrated within Europe. A lot of them took on like work that essentially like skilled labor jobs, right? Again, Ian, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, please, because I don't want to like propagate ignorance. But in the United States, it's very analogous to like the Latino population. Especially a lot of my fellow Latinos, the Mexicans, and also South Americans, that essentially when they immigrated to the U.S., a lot of them took more of that skilled labor, jobs. And again, regardless of how you feel about immigration, essentially we kind of know that a lot of the immigrants will come here, take these jobs, and try to build an opportunity because they're not finding it in their home country. And it's beneficial. And then what happens is when you hire these folks, because they usually like the cheapest game in town. Let's be honest. I'm a cheapo. You know what I mean? Like I will be one that will take a chance on somebody that that I don't know if their price is right, and then if and I'll pick a job accordingly. But I found so many great mechanics, so many great skilled technicians that just charge basically like the rate. Their rate couldn't be beat. I had to take a chance. So it really was. So you owe it to yourself to take a chance. Again, unless you really feel a certain way, right? You should always speak with your dollars, because you should be able to hire whoever you want to hire in terms of working on your house or working on your car and all that stuff. That's why choice is great, right? Ian says, I fell in love with Mexican food in Texas, which I went to yearly at one time. Shout out to first of all, shout out to Texas, right? And shout out to my Mexican Americans and my Mexicans that are in Texas. Texas is obviously one of the major hubs, California being the other. But Mexican food is fantastic. I mean, it doesn't like it. I don't need to say that's kind of like a duh thing to say, but I just feel like again, Ian, you can let me know. I'm assuming that means that London, it doesn't really have a lot of great Mexican food, or maybe it does. I don't know, but I know that's one of those things that we take for granted here in the U.S., especially down in Texas and over in California, also Arizona, also New Mexico, also in Nevada. Really, really good Mexican food. And I happen to live in a part of the DC area that has a lot of Latinos. We have excellent Mexican food, excellent South American food. You owe it to yourself. Yes, we have food from everywhere. Good. That's what I thought. London, I got to imagine everything we have here, London has it. And maybe who knows, they probably have it better. One thing I know, we were just talking about like the Polish population. I know London has a very healthy Polish population. We really don't have that here in our area, like in the DC metro area, but we have a great Polish population in New York. You also have a great Polish population in Chicago, as well as in the Pittsburgh and Philadelphia areas, and Baltimore as well. So those are kind of like the major hubs for the Polish population. And I was just talking about, like, besides Mexican food, because that's what everybody kind of, I think, realizes that Mexican food is great. But there's certain dishes, like Polish dishes, like the borscht, the beet soup, especially like Polish and Ukrainian style. I believe the Polish style has like more heavy cream in it, which I'm okay with. But the Ukrainian style, that I think it's called Ukrainian style borscht, that doesn't have the heavy cream, it kind of has like a little bite to it. Love it. I love I love borscht in any iteration, and and obviously there's kielbasa and all of that stuff. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Like I said, regardless of how you feel about immigration, I think it's hard to kind of deny some of the benefits about all these great foods, right? Ian says Polish shops are on every high street here. Yeah. Just like back home, there's an area in Brooklyn called Greenpoint. Has a very, very heavy Polish population, and actually, it was actually very Polish and also very Latino. It's like there's divisions in there, but they're like very close. And I'm sure that there's an interchange, right? So essentially, you got some Latinos that live on that kind of that border that will go and experience Polish food for the first time, and then vice versa. You'll have your Polish folks that will go into the Latino restaurants and sample the cuisine. I know that our Chinese restaurants are very like integrative, right? So like in New York, you ask anybody that grew up in New York, they'll be able to get like sweet plantains at your local Chinese restaurant. And that's just not something that I believe has a very rich history in China proper. But once the Chinese Americans come here and they enter the neighborhoods, they will find out, what the locals favor. And in the neighborhoods that have a Latino population, you will find things like fried rice and sweet plantains, right? In Spanish, we call them maduros, plátano maduros. And so, yeah, sweet plantains. Ian, you owe it to yourself to try some sweet plantains if you've never tried it. I think you can probably get them in Mexican food restaurants as well, but they're definitely found in a lot of South American and Central American, as well as Caribbean Latino cultures. So if you go into any of those regions, try sweet plantains, right? You owe it to yourself. They're just fried nice and like moist. Oh man, I'm getting hungry. I already told you guys I'm fasting, so usually I'll eat after my live stream. Sometimes I'll go on a walk and then eat after my live stream. So sometimes I don't eat till like 2 p.m. here. Okay, Ian says I've eaten them. Yeah. Again, hopefully I'm not like you're like not the one guy that I've met that that hates them. I haven't really had anybody say that they hate them. I think people they're either those that love them or they're like, okay, that's okay, but I wouldn't do anything special. I don't go crazy over them, right? Which is fine. I can respect that. I haven't run into somebody that's hated them, right? And they can definitely vary in terms of like the ripeness, right? So you really want to get like you can see them, like if you see them in the window. So like if you go to a restaurant and you see them in a window, you can kind of see whether they're like ripe or not because they'll be a lot more moist looking. They'll have kind of like that slick appearance, and then when they dry out, you're like, okay, I should probably avoid those. So just a little tip on how to pick out sweet plantains before you buy them. Yeah. Ian says fried green tomatoes from Texas are also good. Yes. I haven't, again, tomatoes are kind of like a mixed bag as I've gotten older, right? So I told you I'm close to 50. In my 40s, I started getting acid reflux. So tomatoes were something I had to pick my spots on. But I love tomatoes in every variety. I mean, I don't think and I'll still do it. Obviously you can't escape tomatoes if you're getting pizza or things like that, which is, essentially very, very common. Obviously pasta with tomato sauce, any kind of marinara sauce is going to be tomato based. But usually what I'll do is I'll have a set of Tums or some kind of antacid at the ready because I can't say no, especially if I'm somebody's house. If I'm eating at somebody else's house, I don't say no. I basically don't say no to anything. Like unless I know I'm going to have a really bad reaction, or I'm on a special diet, I'll usually not deny it because again, I try to be very respectful of everybody's cuisine, and I'm touched by the fact that somebody invited me into their home. So regardless of my personal situation at the time, unless I'm luckily not allergic to anything that I'm aware of. And usually I'm able to eat everything. And so I have had some really great cuisine. I had alligator here in a local restaurant a few years back. They happened to close, but I think it was Cajun style. So shout out to my Cajuns in Louisiana. We had a great Cajun restaurant here, and they closed down, but they were bought out, and they have another Cajun place that I haven't tried yet. So I'm gonna go there, and hopefully they still serve gator. Yeah, alligator. And I don't think I've had snake. I'm gonna have snake one day. I heard snake is really great, and I'm gonna do it because, well, why not, right? If they serve it in a restaurant, I feel like it's because somebody loves it, right? Somebody thought to make a business and serve this stuff because somebody loves it, right? When I was in Spain, I had pig ear for the first time, and my culture is no stranger to pork. And obviously, a lot of folks, either through religion or through health reasons, do not eat pork. But I happen to love it. And if you go to Madrid, there is a place called La Oreja de Jaime. So essentially, James's ear, the ear of James. It translates into directly in Spanish. And you have the gentleman, the proprietor, Jaime, who will specialize in cooking and frying pig ear. And it's done in such this savory sauce. It's like a sauce with a bite. I forget the name of the sauce. Brava sauce. That's what it's called. Salsa brava. If you go into Madrid at any point in time, go to La Oreja de Jaime, order up some pig ear, and it will come in the salsa brava sauce, and you will thank me later. Even if you don't care for pork, I think you'd enjoy it. It's just out of sight. So Ian says, my grandma used to say, you can use all of a pig except for the squeak or the skeek. Okay, yeah, I don't know that. I'm not familiar with that term, Ian. What? I don't know if that was a misspelling or not. I think I'm reading skeek. I'm not familiar with that word. Say, talk about languages. I love it though. I agree though with that phrase already without even knowing what a skeek or whatever that is. The sound they I get for the squeak. Yeah. Right. Yeah, we would just say squeal. Right? Pigs squeal. Right? The oink oink. Like the old McDonald's song, right? Yeah, I agree. I happen to agree. I don't think there's a part of a pig that I haven't enjoyed. I'm sure that there are parts that I haven't really sampled yet, but I probably would if somebody told me, like if I was at somebody's house or I was at a restaurant and that's what they specialized in, I would do it. Like I said, it's life's too short, and I got to think if a business makes their money on selling this delicacy, like this their signature dish, like I don't see the downside. I mean, it might sound weird in terms of like, oh, I never had that, but again, what was it? Anthony Bourdain. Shout out to Anthony Bourdain. We lost him unfortunately, but he was one of those gentlemen whose show I really enjoyed. I enjoyed his personality. And he made his fame, I think, going around trying these weird foods in other cultures. Weird, right? It might be weird to us, the viewer, but it was a specialty. And he did it, and he was so courageous. And also, just not just courageous, because I don't even know if courageous is the right term, but he was a great ambassador for food. Right? Like when you did that, he made it look like, oh my gosh, I wish I was right there next to him, having a beer and enjoying whatever other thing that, maybe sounded weird at first, but he just made you want to do that. Like he made it fun, right? And that's why I like to do. It's like the sound that, okay, that's what I want to do with the channel. I would love to be the Anthony Bourdain of the hat community. I just don't think I have that kind of I don't think I have that kind of appeal. But again, that's why you kind of just tip your hat to those great personalities, and they serve as role models for how we want to carry ourselves, right? Because the world can be as big or as small as you want it to be, right? We know that the world's large. We know there's a lot of countries out there. We got like 7 or 8 billion people roaming the earth. But thanks to the internet, thanks to the ability, thanks to the various levels of prosperity we might enjoy, and to things like air travel, the world is a lot smaller than it used to be, and it's becoming smaller day by day. For some people that's a bad thing. I think most people at least recognize that there's utility in that. For me, somebody that loves to learn and loves to sample different cultures, that's a boon. Like I'm like pleased as punch, right? So even though I really do relish yesteryear, right, and the times of that existed of when my hats were made, I do recognize that and the benefit that I have of being alive and well in 2025 and being able to travel the world. I don't even know where I'm going to go next. I mean, I missed out on a couple trips here recently. I had a chance to go back to Mexico for the first time in a long time. But I'll make up for that. I also had a chance to go back to Madrid recently, and that didn't work out. The timing and just the everything didn't work out. But I will get back there. I've already been to Madrid twice, and I'm going back. Split, Croatia, I'm going back. It's like Ian says, this talk is a miracle. We live in a world that was science fiction when I was a nipper. I love, first of all, shout out to Ian for saying nipper. That's a term like it wouldn't dawn on me until I saw it. I know what he means, but we don't say nipper. Maybe I would have heard the word lad, or when I was a youngin, here in the States, or when I was a child, or when I was growing up. Nipper, I love it. I love it. Ian, shout out to Ian from London. Please keep that London, that London flair, or basically any other influence you have, because I love words. I love language. Who knows? I feel like if Ian hangs out here long enough, you'll start seeing Luke say nipper, only because, we are the average of the top 5 people we hang out with the most, right? It's like the Jim Rohn saying. Right. Remember, I'm kind of like full of old sayings sometimes. And if I hang out here with Ian long enough here, I'm probably going to start talking like Ian. Who knows? Maybe Ian will start talking like me, for better or worse. It's just we can't help it. It's something that our brains do naturally, because we have that. Remember, we talked about the 3 master motives in psychology, right? I mean, I'm trying to figure out the 3 for the camera, or the three master motives in psychology, right? You have need for achievement, right? So the need to strive, and the need for affiliation, and then also the need for power, right? And we all vary. Every human beings vary on their levels and on each of those, but very much those first 2 are like the 2 primary ones: the need for achievement and the need for affiliation. And essentially, I call them getting ahead versus getting along, right? So need for achievement is getting ahead. Need for affiliation is getting along, right? So even though I study organizational psychology, and those 2 are really prevalent in organizations, because, well, one, people try to achieve in organizations to kind of rise the corporate ladder and get that next promotion and that next pay raise. But they do so in a team environment, right? So they have fellow coworkers, they got supervisors, and they got direct reports, and they're trying to get along with all of them, right? And they can use the same behavior to get along, but also to get ahead, right? Somebody can see how great you are in working in the team, and they're like, you know what? We're promoting Bob over here, right? That's another one I love from the UK. And Bob's your uncle. I just said Bob, but one of my favorite sayings from folks that I've met from the UK are, yada yada yada. We would say yada 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 in New York, yada yada yada. And then, the folks out from your neck of the woods, Ian, would say, and Bob's your uncle, I love that. The other one I've learned is a faff. He's like, that was a real faff, And then we would say something, and I'm going to curse here for the thing. That was a real shit show, right? He's like, it's like, in that thing was a whole faff. You really faffed that up or something like that. I love that. I love it. I love language. I love the regionality and the geography of languages. And again, we're all trying to connote the same feeling and the same sentiment, the same idea, but we're choosing different words, and we use the words that we grew up with, right? We tend to use the same words either our parents or our friends and family, use, or that we somehow picked up along the way, and it becomes a reflection of who we are. Right? People can kind of get an idea of who you are from the words you use and who you hang out with. So yeah, shout out to my my UK folks and all the faffdom. I love it. I love it. A real faff. I'm like, you can't not love it, right? I'm like, now I use it because I happen to be exposed to folks across the pond. And now I know the term, right? And I'm sure there's so many others. I gotta love, besides being a hat geek, a watch geek, and again, junior. I am a junior, also language geek. I just get a real kick out of the some of the language. It's like the word there's a Portuguese term obrigado, which is to say thank you, right? I learned that because I watch MMA, and there's a lot of Brazilians that do MMA, right? It's also Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I had a coworker from Brazil. Anyway, there's obrigado, and there's apparently a connection between the Portuguese word obrigado, which means thank you, with the Japanese term arigato, which also means thank you in Japanese. Again, blows my mind. I don't know anything beyond that, but somebody else that probably knows even more can kind of opine on that. But it just goes to show you how interconnected things are. And sometimes it's just by happenstance, or sometimes it happens to be a story. There's a historical significance of a term that you may or may not be able to uncover if you do the research long enough. And if you know me, I'm a big fan of the research. Anyway, just like all of our other hat streams, I went off on a tangent. Shout out to Ian for coming and swinging by. Ian already said that he couldn't stay long, but you already kind of made this stream enjoyable for me, Ian, just by interjecting. Shout out to Ian and dropping the nipper, right? Like, wow, it just sounds like something to me. If I heard the word nipper without any context, I think something kind of dirty, to be honest. It's like, yeah, that woman's bikini was apparently a nipper. I don't know. Sorry about the foul. I guess I'm getting ready to be a granddad at some point soon. Like I talked about myself not being like I'm not completely ready, but I think I'm ready. I got the jokes and the dirty stuff and all that stuff. Shout out to my dirty grandpas out there. I'm already got training wheels apparently. Anyway, sorry if I offended anybody with that. It wasn't intentional. I try not to be too crass, but I can't help it. I can be crass sometimes. But anyway, shout out to Nipper. Shout out to my UK fans. And I got 2 viewers from the UK, so now I got 2 UK fans. I'm gonna just call you guys fans because apparently I'm got a swelled head already. Anyway, shout out to Ian, shout out to Paul, both in the UK. And I'm hopefully I'll get more UK folks out here, and we can have and obviously the rest of Europe. And we can have a real exchange of culture on this channel, and I'll try to keep it cleaner. Sorry about that. Anyhow, I'm on my last cup of coffee here. So usually you guys catch me on my fizzy drink phase. Things were a little slow today because one, I was preparing for this live stream, and two, Morgan, my moderator, mentioned using a piece of software called Streamlabs, and I was researching it today to see if I can try to do it today, to incorporate it today. But apparently Streamlabs doesn't play nice with Linux, right? If shout out to my Linux nerds. Again, I'm just a junior Linux nerd. I'm running this YouTube stream off of my Linux laptop, right? I run OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. OpenSUSE is a German-based Linux company, a very big Linux company. They are they're very well known in the Linux circles, and I'm running this. I run that operating system on my laptop here. And apparently I looked up Streamlabs. There are ways for you to run Windows programs on Linux. One of them is through a software called Bottles. And I tried it this morning. It didn't work. So I figured, okay, I'm going to stop because I need to do the research for today's topic. And so I stopped that. That took a little extra time. So I wasn't able to chug my coffee like I usually am. So anyway, I will get the Streamlabs up and running. I have a desktop that runs Windows. I will just switch it out and then I'll give it a go. There's some benefits to running Streamlabs that I won't really go into. You guys will see. Hopefully, if I get it working, and maybe for tomorrow, right? Maybe I'll be able to have it set up for tomorrow. Maybe I'll get it set up in time to live stream on my Mets channel tonight. We'll see. We will find out. I don't know. No promises because again, I'm no tech expert. I dabble, I research, and I dabble here and there. Sometimes I get really good at researching stuff, and I'm able to figure it out right away. So who knows? It could be kind of a mixed bag for tomorrow's stream if the software doesn't work right. Either way, I'm on a tangent again. If you're joining us now, the hat of the day is this Dunlap Supreme pork pie hat. And this was my first pork pie hat. If you guys have watched my show in if you guys have watched my one of my previous live streams, you guys saw my Dobbs pork pie hat from the 60s, right? And I mentioned that I had another pork pie hat, and there's a couple reasons I went and I got another brown pork pie hat in addition to this one. And it really is as simple as this band, right? So this is kind of a Western style rope band. And even though it was I wanted this hat, there was a couple reasons why I wanted the hat, right? We always talked about here, right? Some of the common Luke language is what was the hook of the hat. And I got that basically from my research career, right? When you start writing a research paper or write any paper, right? Any kind of like piece of writing that you do to try to attract viewers and attract an audience, you always talk about the hook of the paper, right? So what's gonna hook the reader in and get them to keep reading that article, that piece of writing further? And I'm no professional writer. Like I have published articles, not a lot, but I am published. And essentially, you always talk about when you talk about your writing is what's the hook of this article or this piece. And I take that I use that same terminology when I talk about like my hat collection, right? So like when you see that hat and like you either see it online or you see that that advertisement on Facebook Marketplace or or your Craigslist or whatever you use to kind of acquire your hats. When you see the pictures and you see the description, there's always a hook, and that hook is what gets you to say that buy, hits that buy button, or gets you to hit that reply button when somebody posts the ad, or they just show their hat, right? I don't think I've actually done that, even though I've sold hats that somebody has hit the reply button and asked me, hey, are you willing to sell that hat? I don't think I've ever asked somebody to like sell me their hat. I don't know. I can't tell you why. Maybe it's my bias on. Remember, I told you that when somebody wants the hat, I tend to kind of say, okay, they want the hat. They're like courageous enough to go hit the reply button, even though it was not really listed for sale. And I just get touched by that sometimes. And usually I will try to work out a deal if I can, if the price is right. Because I have that bias to say, okay, if they were courageous enough to go and hit that reply button, maybe this is a better home for that hat. So we'll work out the details, the shipping and the cost and all that stuff. And then we'll either do the deal or not. And maybe it's that same bias that keeps me from doing the same thing when I see somebody else's hat, like I just think, okay, that's the best home for that hat. I don't know. I can't pretend to know every single thing that goes through my brain. I try to be a good self-reflector, and to kind of do like that metacognition, right? If you use another psychological term, metacognition, that's basically thinking about one's thinking, right? And I always try to employ good metacognition and think about my own thinking and my own behavior through self-reflection. And sometimes I feel like I nail it, and sometimes I feel like nope, I still don't buy. Like Luke, I'm not even buying the story about yourself, and that's it. And then I either like have to refine the story or I just drop it until another point. Sometimes I'll go on a walk and I'll have an aha moment, and I'm like, okay, that's what it is. That's why I do what I do. It's because mom is like that, or dad is like that, or I learned it through in college. I don't know. I just try to, just like my hats, I always go and try to scout out the origin of why I am the way I am. And sometimes I get it and I'm able to convey it in a nice, neat story. And a lot of times I'm able to know it, but I'm not able to convey it, right? It becomes like language is like the limiter. I know why in my head, but I'm not able to articulate it correctly or succinctly enough to be worth sharing, to another audience, maybe to a personal audience, like somebody in front of me. I'll have enough, of the hand motion, or like the body language to convey it. But sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I won't go into it because I know I'm going to butcher it, right? Um, so yeah. So back to the hat of the day. This is a Dunlap Supreme pork pie hat from the 50s. And the reason why I got this obviously is because one, at that point, I didn't have a pork pie hat. Two, I don't think I came across too many Dunlap hats, in the course of my hat journey at that point. Honestly, I don't think there's that. I know we have a dedicated thread on the Fedora Lounge. So I have seen other Dunlaps on the Fedora Lounge. That's probably how I knew the brand Dunlap to begin with. And again, in scouting out various ads and all that, I don't think I had come across another Dunlap. Now I'll tell you the one thing that was the one thing I saw about this hat that I really didn't care for is this rope, this Western style rope band. Um, it just again, it screams rustic to me. Like I much prefer a ribbon. And I know that I can go ahead and buy one of those and maybe do it myself. Um, if you know me by now in terms of like in terms of my likes and dislikes, my propensities as a hat collector, you kind of know that I really kind of cringe every time I have to modify one of my hats. I don't think I've ever done it. I don't think I've ever done it. This is one of those examples where I've been really tempted to modify it. I actually posted this for sale on the Fedora Lounge and on Facebook, only because I was hoping that somebody would love it as is, and be willing to like pay me for it, because it's a great, pork pie hat, and it's from a great brand. This is what's known as superior quality from Dunlap, and my research says that Dunlap had, I think, maybe 4 designations. I think there was like a standard quality, an extra quality, which is like going in the up the rungs in the ladder. There was standard, there was extra, and then I think there was superior, which is what this hat is, and then they had the highest tier, which is either the custom or the deluxe tier, and I'm assuming that had to do mostly with the felt quality. This happens to be a fantastic felt quality. To be honest, it was like you can feel it. It's one of those like, oh my gosh, this is very plush. And again, I don't pretend to be an expert on felts. I talked a lot about that when I showed my Celentino felt, which is still probably the best. It's up there in terms of the best felts in my hat collection, but this one is up there as well. I think I have a Kavanaugh that might be better than this. My Kavanaugh might be on like just over this quality in felt, and maybe just under my Borsalino and my Celentino in felt quality, from my recollection. You know what I mean? Like that the D Bar J that I showed yesterday on my live stream is probably up there in terms of felt quality as well. Like, I don't know. I mean, part of it has to do with like the thickness of the felt. That's one of those things. Again, I've never taken a caliper to any of my felts, but one day I do. I do own a set of calipers, and I've never taken a caliper to the felt. But definitely that D Bar J and that Celentino are probably the thickest felts that I've ever felt, right? So pun intended, not intended. Anyway, The other is kind of like, I'm gonna just use the term plushness. The plushness, the softness or plushness of the felt is another kind of thing that I. So those are kind of the thickness and the plushness of the felt. And part of that related to that is kind of like that pliability, right? We talked about the fact that, well, you already know now if you see my streams that I don't like to steam any of my hats. So it really is helpful when I have like a really plush, pliable felt that I can kind of just dry bash, right? You know, you already know about the Luke and his karate chop, right? Like that first, if I get an unbashed fedora, usually I will not leave it unbashed, right? I did that with my Dobbs Hamburg that I sold to the gentleman in Utah. It was a Dobbs Golden Coach, and it came unbashed, right? It looked like it never been bashed. So it looked like a Hamburg bowler hybrid. And then what I did there is like, I wore it a little bit, and I was like, and then I just did the karate chop on it, and it was really nice. It took really well to the center bash, right? And then with that Hamburg, I went and I just took a stepwise approach. I saw how the center bash lived. I liked it a lot. That's actually probably the classic Hamburg style, is just a center bash, and that's it. And you stop right there. But I took it one step further and added the two front dents. And I thought it looked really sharp. It really gave me that kind of a Godfather feel. I don't even remember if Corleone had the two front dents. You guys can tell me. I'll have to look at a photo, or I'll rewatch the movie for like the 100th time and then look out for that detail. But yeah, the Hamburg is usually the center bash, but just no dents in the front. I think the Lord's hats are known for that front center dent. So even though the main distinction between the Lord's hat and the Hamburg is the lack of the bounded brim on the Lord's hat, but I think the additional detail as well is that the Lord's hat will typically have the two front dents. The Hamburg, it's not like you can't, like there's no such thing as a Hamburg with the two front dents, but those are like, I think in terms of the classics, the classic look of the Hamburg is without the two front dents. But somebody that knows better can correct me. I don't mind. I'm just talking here. This is just an old guy talking about his bloviating, right? Like the stream says. And I have been wrong, and it's happened before, and it will probably happen again. But until then, that's my personal opinion. And like the old adage go, I'm an expert in my own opinion, right? But anyway, the Dunlap, right? Really, that got me, right? I was looking for a pork pie hat. So that was already the hook. It was a nice brown. It looked nice in the photos. And I didn't care for the Western style rope band. I still don't care for it per se. I really much prefer your standard ribbon. The one thing I really dig, and I don't own one particular, right? I always told myself, if I did modify this hat and put a new ribbon on it, I would probably put like a back bow, right? Shout out to those to my back bow pork pies. I don't remember when the heyday of the back bow pork pie, but I've seen so many. There's like really big fans of the back bow on the Fedora Lounge, and I've seen some really beautiful examples. The two things about the back bow to me that really stand out are one is the fact that it's a back bow, right? So the bow is not here to the here to the left. Right. So again, I motion to the right, but that's out of habit. If you have a bow on the right, it's usually a hat for a female. But on the left side, the back bow, the bow is where you typically find on a fedora made for a male. Again, no real if I saw a hat that was perfect and it had a bow on the right or some kind of decorative thing on the right, I still buy it. I don't care. Half the people that probably 99% of the people that you would encounter in your day-to-day would not know the difference. To be honest, you would have to be kind of a hat nerd, and I don't think most hat nerds would even mind that. They probably say, hey, just FYI, that hat was for it was made for a female. I'm like, okay, thank you. I knew that, but You know, again, I don't have a hat as far as I know that was made for a female consumer. Again, I think a lot of hats, a lot of fedoras and Hamburgs are probably geared towards a male purchaser. I just think that's, you know, you didn't see too many women. You still don't see many women rocking a Hamburg or rocking a top hat or you know, even a fedora, but fedoras are more likely to, you know what I mean? But a Hamburg, a top hat, and a bowler, not as much. Or even a pork pie. I don't think you would see too many pork pies, you know, being worn by a lot of females. But I think it would be a good look. Honestly, I'd kind of want to see. You know, I'm sure if I Googled it, I'd find a photo of a female in a Hamburg. But you know, you can kind of already know like the typical, like the Winston Churchill look, who popularized the Hamburg. Shout out to the Hamburg and all my Hamburg lovers out there. I am one of them. I think I only have 2 of them now. I used to have 3, but I sold that Dobbs Golden Coach. I still have my Moore's Hamburg, and I have my Dobbs Hamburg, my Dobbs Hamburg from 1957. You know, really love that. It was a Dobbs 15, I believe. You know, really love that hat. It's a gray one. And shout out to Moore's. Moore's, I think, is still around and making hats. I think my hat is from the 90s, maybe. It's a 90s Moore's Hamburg. Again, it's a little controversial. I got that hat from Kevin. Kevin's convinced it's like from the 30s. I don't know. Like the roundel on that Moore's kind of screams, you know, my Fedora Loungers kind of pointed it out that it was a more modern hat. It doesn't matter. The hat has character. It's a beautiful hat, and I could give a lick or give a flip about when it was made. I love the hat, you know, and it actually looks like it got some good wear because it has that patina on it. In that wear, you know that somebody wore that hat, which I'm tickled by, you know, because that's what I do. I wear it. Anyway, back to the pork pie, the Dunlap Supreme. So those were the 2 hooks. Like I said, I had no idea when this pork pie. I knew that based on the styling that it had a good chance of being the 50s or the 60s. Remember, I talked about like the demarcation, the things that you can use to tell a style. I was leaning towards the 50s only because of the sweatband, right? The sweatband was kind of a brownish hue, and I talked about like that at some point after the 40s, excuse me, and into the 50s, you started seeing a move away from the brown sweatband into like more black sweatband that was more popular in the, you know, probably 60s and 70s, to be honest. So the brown sweatband, everybody, all my Fedora Loungers and my Fedora Lounge lizards know about the brown sweatband, and that being an indicator of you know, a dating indicator for any kind of hat, vintage hat. Anyway, we're just under an hour into the stream. I'm going to go into my slideshow. I don't have anybody here. If I don't see you, definitely drop a comment. That way I see you. I'm going to try to do this again without breaking anything. But as is tradition here, I will go into a slideshow. That way you can see some of the photos of this hat and related stuff that I just happened to dig out when I, you know, when I did the research. So there you go. You have just a side profile. This, I'm trying to think. This might have been one of the original photos for you know, for this hat. Actually, no, I think I might have taken this photo. I believe I was in Florida when I picked this one up. I remember I was at a family member's house in Florida when I ordered this hat, and I had it delivered to Florida. I just took a chance and I had it delivered to Florida. I just thought that it would get there on time. So I might have gotten it on eBay or one of the other websites that I get my hats from. But yeah, I had it delivered to Florida. I think I was out there for like a couple weeks. Excuse me as I take a swig of my coffee here. So yeah, for me, this is kind of like the classic shot. So I think this was me trying to recreate that shot. So you can kind of see some of the crown, that pork pie crown that that is synonymous with the pork pie hat. You know, one thing that, and I'll try to just increase this a little bit so that if somebody joins me, we did have, hey, Morgan, what's up? You just joined me. Well, Ian, I think is no longer, I think Ian had to go, but he was here early in the stream. Morgan Brown, our moderator, just showed up. She just said hi. Morgan, I just went and started my slideshow. Let me know if this is coming through. I just want to make sure that, as usual, my sound is okay and that my slideshow is coming through. You know, it's always like a yes, good, excellent. This is literally the first slide I had here for the slideshow. So I'll go into a little bit of this Dunlap Supreme. So essentially, Morgan, what I explained so far is this was my very first pork pie hat. My very first pork pie hat. It happened to be a Dunlap Supreme. So there were two hooks here. One was this. I was looking for a pork pie. So this was obviously one that was vintage, and I was like, okay, I'm getting this hat. The other hook, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but Dunlap. I was familiar with Dunlap, the brand from the Fedora Lounge, but I hadn't run across too many Dunlaps, right? So I was like, holy cow, I haven't seen this brand in any of the other listings that I've seen. So let me go and take a chance on this. The one thing I didn't like about this hat, and you could probably tell right away, was I wasn't a big fan, I'm still not, of the rope, the Western style rope, the rope band around the crown. It just makes it look like more of a Western style. I'm not really into the Western look as much as I am to the standard ribbon, right? So I was like, okay, I can change that if I really wanted to. But you guys already know I'm not a fan. I don't think I've modified any of my hats in my hat collection. I just tend to think of these things as they were on here for a reason. I have no idea if this band that was one that came with the hat or was put there by a previous owner. Who knows? I did know that this was a vintage hat that must have been from the 50s or 60s, based on what I could tell from the features of the hat from the inside. I'll show that in a second. But I already knew, it was like, okay, I hate the ribbon. I don't say hate. Hate is a strong word. I know I'm not a fan of the ribbon, of the rope. But I knew that I could do it myself, but I just never got around to it. You know, I actually put this hat up for sale, at what I thought was a fair price, but, to see if somebody was willing to buy it from me. But nobody bought it from me, so I kept it. I know that it's really easy to change out the band. I just didn't get around to it. And part of me, part of the laziness was, that, well, I was hoping that somebody else would love this hat more than I do and would love the rope, the rope band, or either would modify it because they do it really easily, or that they love the rope and they wouldn't change a thing. Remember I talked about, I have a bias when it comes to these hats sometimes, that, if I end up selling a hat, or if I see somebody else wearing a hat, I won't really offer somebody money for their hat because, well, one, I just think that they're the rightful owner. But if somebody buys a hat from me, or replies to me and says, hey, how much will you take for that hat? I always I never make a first offer, only because I don't know. I don't want to insult somebody, and shoo them away. But usually what I'll say is make me an offer. And if the offer is right, and I know that it'll go to a good home, I'll usually make a deal. But this one I put for sale on Facebook, and I put it on for sale at Fedora Lounge. Nobody bought it. So maybe just like me, they didn't care for the rope style, but everything else about this hat is awesome. Everything besides that rope band. And, we'll see. I feel like if I did ever switch out the band on this hat, I'd probably put a back bow, right? So I put a back bow ribbon, like I was mentioning earlier, on this because I just happen to be a huge fan of the back bow ribbon pork pies. They look really sharp and they're really thick. I like that really thick band on the hats. You know, not that I'm opposed to a skinny band, but on a pork pie, I think it looks really sharp when you have a nice, maybe the same color or a nice contrasting color. So like this is a brown, maybe a nice cream colored or a taupe, or a Sudan, like if you've seen with some of Kevin's hats. I think this would look really sharp. You know, something that looks kind of like the rope, the color of the rope that's on there now. It just looks too Western for me, and it's just not my style. So yeah, despite the rope band, I knew that's something I could have changed. So I went and I bought this anyway. So this is just the front profile. The felt was in really good shape. I think it just needed a brushing. And I don't even know if I actually ever did. I didn't brush this hat today. I don't think I've ever really brushed this hat. So it probably still looks like this right now on my head. You just can't see it on the camera maybe. But I probably do that. I'll probably brush this hat, give it a good brushing after I'm done with this stream, because you know that's the one maintenance item that I really do like to do to my hats. I don't steam them like I mentioned before. I thought about maybe putting two front dents, right? Reason why is because I don't know. I mean, I think it's gonna have to be if I had an urge to put two front dents in my pork pie hat. Again, it's not a strong urge. It'd probably be because if you see my previous pork pie show for my Dobbs pork pie, one of the famous wearers of the pork pie hat was Popeye Doyle, right? The character Popeye Doyle in the movie The French Connection, which is from the 1970s. And that particular movie, the original, was played, Popeye Doyle was played by the late, great Gene Hackman. Shout out to Gene Hackman. We lost him, I think, this past year. He was like 90-something years old, and he was living in New Mexico with his wife, and passed away kind of tragically, I believe. Anyway, shout out to Gene Hackman. I love his movies. He's classic. And he did The French Connection, and he played Popeye Doyle for the first time. There was a sequel or sequels, and that was played. Popeye Doyle was played by Ed O'Neill, who played Al Bundy in Married with Children. So shout out to Ed O'Neill. He also wore a pork pie in that. If you remember that show, you will know that I stopped the movie. The movie French Connection. I stopped it somewhere in the movie. He's Gene Hackman. Popeye Doyle is in a bar, and he takes off his pork pie hat, and you get a shot of the inside of his pork pie hat. And when I did it, I swore it was a Dobbs pork pie. It just looked like a Hat Corporation of America hat in the movie. And somebody that knows better could maybe correct me if I'm wrong in that. But I do believe, the researcher in me, is going to need convincing to tell me what kind of hat, if it wasn't a Dobbs or some sort of Hat Corporation of America pork pie, what kind of pork pie did Gene Hackman wear in the original French Connection movie in the 70s? I'm really interested to know. And again, I don't mind being corrected. I just want to learn. And that way, once I learn it, I can give people that see this show good information. I'm just the way I'm built. So anyway, this Dunlap Supreme pork pie, the two hooks were, one, it was a pork pie. This was my very first pork pie hat. It was a vintage hat, a Dunlap hat, and it was a Supreme quality one. That's one thing, like I talked about right before I started the slideshow. Dunlap had 4 major felt quality, hat felt quality. They had a tier, and starting from the lowest tier was like the standard tier, standard quality hat was, I think, the lowest quality Dunlap you can get. Next up, I think, was the extra quality. That was the number 2 tier. The extra quality was the number 2 tier, and right above the extra quality was the superior quality. So this was the 3rd level in the Dunlap felt quality hierarchy, and right above superior, I believe it was either custom or deluxe, was right above. And just FYI, we know that Dunlap, I just mentioned, was part of the Hat Corporation of America. Apparently it was considered like the highest hat corporation, just under Kavanaugh. right? So, John Kavanaugh was the head of Hat Corporation of America. At least as far as I know, he was the head, John Kavanaugh. And Kavanaugh hats were the apex, from my understanding, of Hat Corporation of America. And then right under Kavanaugh was Dunlap. And probably Knox was right there with him. So, according to my research, it was technically a three-tiered: Kavanaugh, Dunlap, and then Knox. But for a lot of folks, Knox and Dunlap were right around the same quality. I do know that my Kavanaugh that I have is a superior felt to this. Even though this is a very nice felt, my Kavanaugh that I have, I believe from the 1950s, is superior. Like, you can feel it. Like to my untrained touch, you can feel the quality difference. So I don't know. Somebody that's more like a proper hatter, like somebody like Paul from Passion for Hats and PJ Murphy and Sons, maybe they'll be able to opine a lot better on like the various felt qualities. I'll get Paul on here at some point. And maybe even Kevin will be able to talk about that. But anyway, those were the two hooks. The one detriment of this hat, and probably the reason why I picked up my Dobbs that I showed on a previous, and probably why I wear my Dobbs a lot more than this hat, is because of that ribbon. Again, I know it's pretty dumb of me because it is easy to change out. I just have this compulsion, this thing of modifying my hats. I just don't like it. I don't like modifying it, and I feel scared to do it because I feel like I'm altering the history of the hat in some way, and I'd rather just leave it the way I received it, And that's why I put it up for sale. I put it up for sale. Nobody bought it. That's cool. It was a pretty hefty price, because I feel like the hat's worth it, This is for me, this hat is a special piece. And somebody that wants to modify it afterwards, they feel free. If you ask me, this hat should have a thick back bow. Like, that's what belongs on this hat. Either the same color, brown, or a some kind of color that's existing on the rope that's on there now. Because it just looks too rustic to me right now. For a hat like this, I think it should be it should have that back bow. But I don't know. Not for me to do right now. Maybe I'll get a bug in my bonnet later on about it, and I'll do it. So this is the inside. You can kind of see one, you can notice the Dunlap crest and the roundel. It's a very, very luxurious looking logo. You know what I mean? Again, I don't know. I see a crown on top of there. I see the quality designation Supreme. And it also has, we talked about it, it has like a chocolate lining, which I thought looked really sharp. That's what I think. The headband, the sweatband, and the lining are kind of like this chocolate, varying levels of chocolate. And I think it looks really sharp. I gotta tell you, we looked at some of the red linings on some of my hats that I've shown before. The chocolate lining here and that chocolate covered sweatband really makes this pop, contrasting against the gold, right? You look at the logo, the roundel that's in gold, it looked really sharp, right? You can see a little bit of the size tag on this. I'll show you another photo, kind of get you a better look at that. But obviously the other marker here for me was the plastic tip liner. And again, we talked about this before. We talked about it ad nauseum now, but I'll repeat myself just for the new folks out there that might see this stream first. The reason why this exists is because at some point in history, hat manufacturers started catering to men's style, the evolving men's hairstyles that were a lot more product, right? People that's existed for a long time, but at some point, the hat manufacturing caught up and said, you know what? We noticed that a lot of our customers are complaining that the product that they're putting in their hair to style their hair is staining the hat lining. So this was their attempt to kind of cater to those customers, and that way they didn't have to ruin the hat lining with the product that they're using in their hair. I thought that was pretty slick. And it goes to show you that hat manufacturers are really trying to keep up with styling, the general styles and the general times of the day. to be able to make sure that people who spend their hard-earned money on their hats, especially on the Dunlap, right? Remember, Dunlap was second only to Kavanaugh on that ladder of quality, right? So when you were shelling out money for a Dunlap, you were ponying up for like luxury, right? It was like maybe like buying a Louis Vuitton or a Prada product right now. You know what I mean? Like you were trying to get or maybe like a GM product, right? So essentially, if this was a GM product, this would probably be like Buick, right? Kavanaugh would be like Cadillac, and Dunlap was like the Buick line in like GM, to make an analogy. And then Knox would be something like, I don't know Knox would probably be like another Buick. What would be like the Knox? I don't know, maybe Pontiac. But probably both Dunlap and Knox were like Buick for Hat Corporation of America, with Kavanaugh being the Cadillac. Sorry, I'm just making analogies for my car guys that might be into hats or getting into hats. It's just like, for Ford, it'd be like Lincoln and then Mercury, right? So it'd be Ford would be Ford would be like all the other brands, and then you would have Knox and Dunlap as being Mercury, and then you have Lincoln as Kavanaugh. Sorry, that's all I'm going to do. I'm done with the analogies for the cars, all right? Promise. So yeah, moving in more into like pictures of the hat. Morgan just said, I have never heard of the brand Dunlap before. Yeah, apparently it's interesting because I made the same mention about Berg, right? Berg and Dunlap were brands that I knew from research belonged to the Hat Corporation of America. But again, I got to think that they were more niche, right? So I think Dunlap and to a lesser extent Berg were known, but I think they had a dwindling. Like obviously, sorry, I'm like my coughing. I'm gonna take another swig here before I go talk. But the way I understand it is kind of like GM, right? GM was a conglomerate that had a lot of brands, and then what happened was at some point, John Kavanaugh must have came to the same conclusion that GM did, is that we have way too many brands. And maybe, just maybe, Dunlap was phased out as well as Berg. And because I know, like, if you look at a Hat Corporation of a hat now, like if you look at Hat Corporation of America, you're going to see out there Dobbs, you're going to see Knox, and you're going to see Kavanaugh to a lesser degree, right? And probably in that order. Like in my mind, I see a lot more of Dobbs and Knox, and just to a slightly lesser degree, I see Kavanaugh out there. But Dunlap and Berg and like any of the other like Hat Corporation of America brands, you don't see them. You don't see them a lot. And I got to think that it makes this hat a lot more rare. Like my Berg hat and my Dunlap hat, to me, are a lot more rare examples than you're going to find out there if you're like a vintage hat nerd like me. And if you do find it, you're going to pay probably a lot more money, to be honest. Because they're just, in terms of rarity, again, I don't know the answer. Like, again, I'm not going to speak for every hat collector. I'm just a hat collector, a vintage hat collector. There's a lot of others that know way more. They probably forgot more than I ever knew about vintage hats. So I'm just speaking off of my opinion. So please don't take anything I say as gospel. But I will tell you that besides the plastic tip liner, besides besides the fact being a Porkpie and being a Dunlap, another indicator here is that size indicator, right? You see that 7 1/4. I just know this from Hat Professor, the hatitprofessor.com. Apparently that label, that size label, that shifted at some point during, I think I want to say the 50s. So I believe during the 50s and earlier, that label, that hat size label had shifted. So that font made me think, like, the font that I see there is different on hats that are from the 60s and later. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, there's a good chance that this hat is from the 50s, right? So besides the plastic tip liner and besides, everything else, I was like, okay, this is probably from the 50s. So yeah, again, I'm just trying to get you to learn a little bit about how I think when I see hats, especially vintage hats, and what are the hooks. And you guys will probably have completely other hooks about why you guys buy certain hats. Maybe it's the brand, maybe it's just, who knows? Who knows what the hooks are? Everybody has different hooks about what gets them to hit the buy button. But these are like, for me, when I see hats, these are like the hooks that get me. And I'm like, okay, as long as it's not $1 million and I can afford it, because I try not to spend too much on my hats, because again, I have a lot of hats. If I spent $1 million for each one, I would have no hats basically, right? I'm not spending dollars. I've never spent $1 million on a hat, and nor would I. That's way too much for a hat. But you know what I'm trying to get at. I'm speaking euphemistically. Anyway. So yeah, there's another shot of the size label. The reason I posted that shot is because one, just for my fellow hat nerds, my vintage hat nerds, that'll give them a clue as to when the hat was made. There's more clues, but I'll talk about that in a second. And there's just the Dunlap logo on the sweatband, again, really premium looking logo. You can see Dunlap, New York. And let's see if I don't know how good this quality this photo is, but I'll blow it up a little bit. You can see already the sweatband was in really good shape. Obviously worn a little bit when I got it, but like it really looked good. Like, who knows? I don't know how long, if somebody who owned this hat and how long they wore it, but by all means, like the sweatband was in really good shape, and really still is, because I hardly wear this hat, only because I'm not a big fan of the rope. Again, call me crazy. I'm just not somebody that modifies their hats, at least not yet. And even something as silly as the rib, the ribbon, it's just something I'm either too lazy or just too stubborn to do it myself and just get done with it. We'll see. If I never sell this hat, then at some point I'm gonna just basically I'll do it myself, or I'll get somebody to do it for me. Maybe Kevin will do it for me. I don't know. But that's the state of the hat. So what I'll do is, like usual, I will go and I will show you some Chat GPT stuff, right? So we got into Dunlap, the brand. Morgan already said she never heard of Dunlap before. So now I'm gonna show you a little bit of what I uncovered from Chat GPT about Dunlap, the brand, right? So I'll blow this up a little bit more, and I'll read some of this. I don't know if I'll read all of it, because you guys probably don't want to see me just read to you all day. So yeah, so essentially says origins and history. So shout out to Chat GPT for like giving this information, but it says founded. Dunlap and Company was established in 1857 in New York City by Charles Dunlap. Specialty. Dunlap's specialty was high quality men's hats, especially silk toppers, right? I believe toppers are just top hats, right? Shout out to the toppers. I don't own a topper or top hat yet, but I will. I'm just, one day I will come up here and I will show you a top hat. I just don't have one in my collection right now. One, because they probably take up a lot of space. But yeah, shout out to my toppers out there, especially silk toppers, derbies, Hamburgs, and later felts. They quickly gained a reputation for refinement and were a favorite among the upper classes. All right, there you go. Apparently, this was a hoity-toity brand. Like I said, in the big three, Dunlap was part of the big three New York hatters, alongside Knox and Stetson's Eastern operations, serving a wealthy urban clientele. So there you go. Apparently, this was Dunlap was kind of a big deal. So in terms of locations, it says the main store, the flagship store, was at 178-180 Fifth Avenue, New York City, a very fashionable address at the time. They also had branch stores in other cities, including Chicago, catering to an elite audience. You can already see the terminology they're using around Dunlap. So again, I did not know all of this when I bought the hat. I knew Dunlap of Dunlap, the brand, but I didn't know all this. to be honest. So it says, like Knox, they also ran showpiece retail locations, often more elegant than the typical hatter's shop. So there you go. So Knox, they kind of followed the playbook by Knox. But as I mentioned before, I own a lot more Knox hats, or at least did own if I sold a couple. But I owned a lot more Knox hats and Dobbs hats than any other Hat Corporation of America brand, right? So the way, in terms of like surviving members of the Hat Corporation of America that you might see out in the wild, you see Dobbs and Knox first, and then maybe some Kavanaugh. But like things like Dunlap and Berg and some of the other brands, you don't see them as much. So just FYI. And it says reputation, prestige brand. A Dunlap hat was considered a mark of social standing. Their silk hats were amongst the most sought after in the Gilded Age and early 20th century. Their advertising often highlighted refinement, luxury, and correctness in gentleman's dress. So it's like very pinky, right? So this was like the pinky hat, It's like, pass the Grey Poupon. Sorry about that. I just had to do it. He says they competed directly with Knox and Crowfoot and Knapp, right? Later Kavanaugh, right? So you can see they competed with each other, just like the GM brands, right? So somebody be like, all right, I'm going to buy a GM, but they don't know if they're going to buy a Cadillac, they're going to buy a Buick, they're going to buy a Pontiac, they're going to buy a Chevy, or a Saturn later on. Like there were so many brands, and you can imagine that those brands could coexist as in the heyday of hats. But as hat wear started declining, these guys started cannibalizing sales from each other. So I'm sure Kavanaugh said, you know what, we gotta reduce this, and probably Kavanaugh decided later on, when he saw the writing on the wall, he probably said, you know what, just like GM did, we gotta retire some of these brands. That's why you don't see brands like Pontiac anymore, right? GM got rid of Pontiac because they said, hey, this is taking away sales from Chevy. This is taking away sales from Cadillac. This is taking away sales from Buick. So they got rid of some of the brands because you have to pay money. Just like now, the more brands that you have, the more money you have to spend to put out the advertisements, right? So when you're putting out a paper advertisement out for Knox, if you want to go and sell Kavanaugh, you got to put out more money for a Kavanaugh advertisement, or more money for a Dunlap, more money for a Berg. Marketing costs money. So a savvy businessman that owns a bunch of brands, even though it pains them probably to like lose out, because you can imagine Kavanaugh was acquiring and paying money for these brands. This is a merger and acquisitions, right? He was building a conglomerate with Hat Corporation of America, but essentially he had to make a choice at some points to kind of make sure that the company, Hat Corporation of America, survived and was able to turn a profit. Again, I'm speculating, but it just seems like it fits. The story fits. And in here, products, silk hats known for exceptional quality, worn by financiers, politicians, and high societies. Again, not to get into like all this hoity-toityness, but just like I know that some people will buy a Prada or a Louis Vuitton, or they'll even buy some other kind of like major brand because they want to signal, right? They want to signal to their fellow human being that they're coming up in the world, just like people that buy Rolex, or they'll buy an Omega watch. It's a marker of status, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not big on like showing logos and things like that. I used to do that probably when I was younger, when I made my mom buy me Nike shoes, even though we really shouldn't be spending money on that. Like we didn't have that kind of money growing up. But I just did like what a lot of kids like my age did. I just begged my parents, and later on, I just basically started saving money, so I could afford some of these things. I bought my first bike was bought by my parents. And I actually bought my second bike. That's just a little tidbit about Luke, about younger Luke. I bought my very own second bike with my own money that I saved up from just money I collected either by begging my parents for allowance, my uncles that would come along and throw me a few dollars, my grandma who did very well in life and happened to like, she didn't like loosen up money. She was more like the person that gave me underwear for my Christmas and birthday instead of money. But every once in a while, like she felt sorry for me and she opened up her brown bag. My grandmother would carry a brown paper bag full of like wads of money. I was like, wow, what the heck is that? She'd take me to church, and like when it came down to like giving an offering, so my grandma was Catholic, and then she took me when she had to babysit me. She actually went and took me to her Catholic church in Brooklyn, and then when it came down to it, my grandma would kind of pull out a wad of cash. I don't know how she was not. I guess she was pretty fearless at the time, but she would put out, because everybody carried cash. That's the way you did business. There was no credit cards. But my grandma just seemed to like, essentially, I just thought she was rich, and maybe she was rich. I just never thought about that. She certainly didn't dress like she was rich, but apparently she was just somebody that probably grew up around or just after the Great Depression, and she just like knew the value of a dollar, and she didn't spend haphazardly, right? So shout out to my grandma. I really miss her. She passed away in the early 90s, and I really do miss her. I do miss the underwear too. Now I pretty much have to buy my own underwear more or less these days. Such is life, right? Anyhow, derbies and bowlers, sleek, well-shaped, fashionable among businessmen. And it says by the early 20th century, Dunlap began producing fine felt fedoras, Hamburgs, and other soft hats as styles shifted away from stiff hats. This is one of those, right? This is a fine felt pork pie style hat. Again, probably not. This might have been one of those hats that they didn't sell a lot of, only because, well, if I'm looking at this brand now, I'm looking at, okay, this was like, I got to imagine politicians and financiers in high society was not wearing pork pie hats. It's just something that they did because they were like, you know what? We're going to expand, right? We're going to come up with the pork pie style hat just in case. Who never knows? Like I said, for the person on the come up, right? It's the guy that's not, he's not a financier. He's not a politician, but he still wants to brand and still wants to look cool on the street. He probably was the one that bought the Dunlap pork pie. But anyway, they were often marked inside with an elegant gold Dunlap logo on the sweatband and hat and tip liner. So there you go. You already seen that tip liner that I showed you. I thought it looked really sharp, and it had that nice chocolate lining. And here I'll go into a little bit more of what I got from ChatGPT. Again, I'm sorry if you guys are annoyed by the reading. I just happen to geek out over this kind of stuff. So it says here, mergers and later years. Like many prestige hatters, Dunlap did not survive as an independent. Excuse me, sorry about it. I got the hiccups here. Like many prestige hatters, Dunlap did not survive as an independent maker. In the 1920s, Dunlap was absorbed into Crofa and Knapp, the same company that owned Knapp Felt and later launched Kavanaugh, right? This is essentially the predecessor of Hat Corporation of America. You guys can kind of see that on thehatedprofessor.com and learn a whole lot more. Thehatedprofessor.com is an excellent resource for anything and everything Hat Corporation of America. It's really great. I really recommend it. Anyway, even after the acquisition, Dunlap hats were sold as a distinct brand for decades, marketed as a premium line within the Crofa and Knapp family. By the mid-20th century, the name had largely faded as Stetson and Kavanaugh dominated the American felt hat market. So there you go. You can kind of see, essentially what happened to, some of the backstory about what happened to Dunlap. And it says cultural presence. While not as frequently name-checked in movies as Stetson or Borsalino, Dunlap was a well-known luxury brand among fashionable men in New York from the 1870s to the 1930s. Surviving examples, especially toppers and early fedoras, are highly collectible today, with the condition being critical to value. So collector notes. So for my collectors out there, my fellow hat nerds that are into vintage, labels and markings. Most Dunlaps are marked by Dunlap and Company inside with elegant script. Some later examples bear crowfoot and nap mark hallmarks. I don't know if I didn't check, but I didn't notice anything that mentioned crowfoot and nap markings. But therein lies kind of the ongoing mystery. While this hat is still in my possession, I may uncover more of it. Who knows? Maybe I'll just it won't be for sale anymore. Once I really start learning more about the hat, it's already I'm really kindling the feels, right? Like the kids say, the feels I got when I first got this hat. Anyway, rarity. Silk hats are easier to find than felts. That's interesting, since the silk ones are often more preserved as formal wear. Early fedora models are quite scarce. So apparently, like I said, everything's telling me that this is a very rare hat. So, again, that definitely helps with at some of the allure of the hat. But again, I didn't know how rare it was, I guess. But apparently really rare. Quality. Dunlap was considered top tier, on par with Knox and later Kavanaugh. Collectors regard their felt finishes as superb, especially pre-1930s. Now, this is not pre-1930s. Shout out to my hat nerds that own pre-1930s Dunlap. Apparently, you have a very special specimen on your hands, and enjoy it. And I hope hopefully you wear it. If I had one, I'd wear it. Anyway, on to more photos. So this is another nuance that a piece of the sweatband that always catches my eye. We always talk about the brand and some of the research and nerdery that goes along with the brand. But equally, and sometimes just as much, maybe even more, are the hat shops, right? That some of these brands were marketing to and were being sold to, right? So this one just happened to be a B&B clothes shop, store for men since 1907 in Ogden, right? So shout out to my folks in Utah. This is a hat shop from Utah, right? I mentioned I had my buddy, my good friend that bought two of my hats from Utah. This is a little piece of Utah right here from Ogden. Apparently B&B Clothes Shop has a pretty rich history in the Ogden, Utah area. I've never been to Utah, but I know some folks that live in Utah. I will get out there one time, at least to the Salt Lake City area. And who knows, maybe Ogden now, right? Now that I own a little piece of Ogden here, that might be just what I need to go and make that trip. Shout out to my folks from Utah. Shout out to the gentleman. I won't mention his name, to protect his privacy. But he is I consider him a friend. He's definitely a client, right? If you buy one of my hats, I consider you a client of mine as well. And even though I'm not a I don't consider myself a hat seller, or a business like that. But if I sell a hat, then, well, by definition, I'm a hat seller. So I try to treat myself and carry myself as a brand, because I want people not to be afraid and to want to do business with me, right? Like I said, even if you go and say, "Hey, Luke, I'd like to buy a hat from you," and I say no, thank you. Please know I'm never insulted by that. I'm kind of touched by it, honestly. And like I said, it just reaffirms the fact that when I buy a hat, the feels that I get when I buy a hat are the same feels that somebody else, one of my other fellow hat nerds, might get. And they had the courageousness, the courage to kind of hit that reply button and reach out to me, right? Some of them have become my friends on Facebook. Just like Morgan. Morgan's now my friend on Facebook, and I'm happy to have her in my network. I don't take that lightly. Like I said, Morgan is now an ambassador in my eyes. Besides being an ambassador of this channel, she's a regular viewer. She's a moderator here, and she's part of that next generation that's putting their stamp on the hat community. And really need that. We need more Morgans out there. So shout out to Morgan. I appreciate it. So yeah, a little bit about B&B Clothes Shop, right? I'm going to leverage ChatGPT again because again, I think it's been really helpful. Hopefully, people are okay with me using Chat GPT because I think it's just really useful for if you don't want to take the time out to have to research and do like all the Google searching, like Chat GPT really does it for you. It will go and it will pluck things like you can see some of the sources that they cite here. They even go into Facebook and Instagram to get some of this information, as well as other more reputable like Wikipedia and all that stuff. So you can see that the founders of B&B Clothes Shop in Ogden, Utah, were Joseph and William Benowitz, and they were brothers who immigrated to the U.S. as children in 1891. They became prominent members of Ogden's Jewish community. Shout out to my Jewish community out there. A very rich hat history with the Jewish community. Obviously, I'm from New York, Brooklyn. We are home to a very prominent Hasidic Jewish population. Right? We talked about Celentino and Selco hats, as well as Bellissimo. Right? They are pillars and they are companies that did exist, and Bellissimo still exists. It's a more recent hat shop that caters to the Jewish community, particularly the Hasidic Jewish population, because the way I understand that is religiously, the hat is a fixture in that community because there's a religious connotation. I believe it provides some sort of protection. Again, any of the folks that are more knowledgeable, if I'm butchering any of this, please correct me. But that's the reason why you see that the hats, right? If you watch the Blues Brothers, right, when the Blues Brothers were out on the mission for God, when they entered the diner to put the band back together, and they went to the diner where Aretha Franklin's and her boyfriend or husband at the time was working because he was a member of the band. She told her husband or her boyfriend there, she said, "Hey, you got a couple of two Hasidic Jews looking guys," or something like that. They made reference to the Blue Brothers. They look Jewish. And I get that all the time as well, right? So because of the fedoras, some of them are black, and because of my pie chain, which looks like the Jewish symbol of Chai, again, I don't know the connection any further than that. That what is the relationship between pi and Chai? I believe Chai, the symbol that looks very much like pi in the community, I think it translates into peace. But again, some of my Jewish viewers can opine on that and make sure that I'm giving good information. But it says here, the next generation, especially Ralph Benowitz, Joseph's son, helped run and later expand the business. The family was active at Congregation Berith Sholem, Ogden's historic synagogue. So shout out to Ogden and the Jewish community out there. This is a piece of hat history. And I don't know if I'll go into all of this here. You can probably get the same information from Chat GPT, but it gives you I geek out over this stuff, to be honest, because it really is history, right? So researching the brand is really just as, and maybe even more important than researching the hat shops is just as, and maybe even more important in the historical sense. Like for me, it is, right? So like when I go and I research the hat brand, I feel like we owe it to ourselves to kind of also research the hat shop that either still exists, hopefully, or maybe did exist and doesn't exist, and why, right? When this shop made it, it looks like this hat store made it. So it started in 1907 and it made it all the way to like 1979, 1980. That's a pretty good longevity, right? So a lot of hat shops were closed in the 60s and 70s. This one made it all the way to the 80s, like the early 80s, maybe. That's a good run, right? For a hat shop. I think for our fellow hat nerds, we know that's a really good run for a hat shop. So again, shout out to any of the next generation of the Benowitz family, right? So the descendants of Joseph and William Benowitz, that might still be out in Ogden, Utah. This is a little bit of your history here. So if you ever do see any of his videos, definitely reach out. I'm curious to hear about your understanding of what was going on with the Benowitz family. Maybe I have no idea if Ralph is still alive, but if he is, and or maybe his kids are still alive, I'd definitely love to hear from you. Definitely drop a comment. A little bit more here in terms of the history of B&B Clothes Shop. There is. There was a 1969 ad that includes a short bio of Joseph Benowitz. I actually have a copy of that as well. I'll actually show that up, in the slideshow. So just to kind of like give you a rough, quick timeline of the Benowitz family and the B&B Clothes Shop. In 1891, the Benowitz family immigrates to the U.S. I believe they came from Russia, but I could be wrong. I believe they came from Russia. And they were apparently Russian Jews. So you can imagine that what was going on, obviously during that time and also after that time with the Jews in Europe and in Russia in particular. Early to mid 20th century, the Benowitz brothers operate in Ogden, later branded B&B Clothes Shop downtown. In the 1960s, ads and photos place B&B at 2473 Washington Avenue. So I don't know. I'm not familiar with Ogden, Utah, but maybe some folks that might watch this can tell me what's there now. If there any kind of indication that still exists that there was a hat store located there, I'd be interested in knowing and maybe even seeing the photo. But store thriving as a fine men's clothier. And in 1979 to 1980, like I mentioned, the family sells the business. Again, probably a variety of reasons for why that happened. Maybe business dried up. Obviously, we know that into the late 70s and the 80s, hat wear is just way out of vogue. They probably had trouble making a profit in selling clothes, fine men's clothes. And it could be that the next generation, maybe after Ralph Benowitz, just had no interest in keeping the store running. So again, I'm really interested to those folks that know the area. Maybe you live in Ogden, Utah, or just familiar with the store and or the Benowitz family. I'd love to hear from them or any of the folks that know of them. But here's a photo of the family. I believe this was from the 1920s or so. If I'm correct, I believe on the left side, you have the younger looking gentleman on the left side of this photo. If you're viewing this like the way I'm viewing it, kind of looking like a gray suit is Joseph Benowitz, I believe. And the gentleman on the far right with another family, they're all surrounded by wife and children. I believe their daughters there. And the gentleman on the very far right is William Benowitz, if I got that right. And I can only assume by the age is maybe their dad is the gentleman on the far left. I don't know what their dad's name was, but apparently probably dad to both. That's probably the dad of both Joseph and William, and you can see their two wives there. As well as two children, which look like they're two daughters. This photos from the early 20s, I believe, or sometime in the 20s. And then you saw ChatGPT refer to the autobiographical ad in the 60s. And I believe this is from 1969, if I got that correct. But it shows Joseph Benowitz, the founder of B&B Clothes Shop. And he goes and he says, as a young immigrant to the United States in 1891, and thereafter a factory worker in New York City. Shout out to New York, another connection to Hat Mecca, New York City, and St. Joseph, Missouri. Joseph Benowitz desired to set up his own business to fulfill a boyhood dream. Wow, what a great story. That's a great opener. I love this stuff. In 1907, he rode the Union Pacific Railroad to Ogden on the suggestion of an old friend. Wow, what a great story. I love it. Alighting from the train, what a great word, alighting. Alighting from the train, he was immediately excited about the beauty of the nearby mountains and the inspiring sunset beyond Great Salt Lake. His decision to remain was immediate, with two brothers joining him at later dates. Wow, he had two brothers. I only knew of one William, but can't recall the other brother. Maybe the older gentleman that was in that photo was an older brother and not the dad. So I don't know the answer to that, but maybe somebody does. Now, 62 years later, so again, 1969, more or less, B&B Clothes Shop is a third-generation family-owned business carrying on the policies of personal interest in its customers and community as set down by the founder. Reinvestment in our facility over the years demonstrated our faith in Northern Utah and has enabled B&B Clothes Shop to maintain its image as Ogden's leading fashion store for men and boys. Wow, look at it. There you go, the B&B Clothes Shop logo here. What a great ad. What a super ad. And I'm glad that I was able to find this. So, again, this is no big find. I was able to do this with a simple Google search of the hat store and for the Benowitz family. But shout out to the Benowitzes, shout out to B&B Clothes Shop, and shout out to Dunlap. This is another ad here, and I thought it just looked like one of those vintage ads that you kind of, you'll see on really touted on the Fedora Lounge. Just a great avatar. You can see kind of a gentleman wearing a fine robe there. It looks like it's a robe. So they're advertising State of Maine robes. I don't think I see any hat shower. This is a Christmas ad, apparently. So this is something that they were advertising for you to get Dad a nice Christmas gift during the, I guess maybe the 50s or 60s when this ad came out. But it says maybe a brace of white shirts will please him. Maybe, on the other hand, he wants a robe in a particular style and color. One thing you're sure of, be he easygoing or a male prima donna, you're sure to please him with a gift from B&B Clothes Shop. I love it. So they advertise State of Maine robes from $10.95, sport shirts from $3.95, dress shirts from $3.95, and pajamas coming from $3.75. Gloves available from $2.95, and don't forget his slippers. You got nice slippers there from $5.95 to $7.95, and of course, free gift folders. I'm guessing that means wrapping. And all of this came from B&B Clothes Shop, store for men since 1907. Your gift for him will mean more if it bears the B&B Clothes Shop label. God, I love that, man. It just puts me in that headspace, So yeah, shout out to B&B Clothes Shop and to the Benowitz family. This is actually a photo of the clothes shop. I believe here on the right side, you can see the storefront right next to a shoe repair shop and a fabric center and a jewelry shop. You had the B&B Clothes Shop. I believe this is from the 60s. Yeah, wow, what a treat. And then I'll just close this here. Kind of a ubiquitous hat label, right? Again, I talked about this the other day when I showed the learnings from Hat Corporation of America, right? They standardized their labels. This shout out to the hattedprofessor.com. The Hatted Professor is where I learned this. And let me just take a swig of coffee before I go into it. One of the clues here, and again, I didn't see this. This is a photo that I took. This is like, again, I'm going to refer to this probably from here on out as peeking under the hood. Peeking under the hood for this this Dunlap Supreme Porkpie. I was able to confirm that this hat was from the 50s, right? And if you recall my little tidbit, my lesson from before about why this was you can tell this is a hat from the 50s. Well, it's in that label there, right? You can see that thing. It says right on the bottom, it says oval, to duplicate, block, and size, right? That's a label that there was two variations that Hat Corporation of America used, and it just happened. One variation came from the 50s. The other variation came from the 60s. And the variation from the 50s had to do with that number there between the block and between the size, right? So you can see it says 3 7/8. And that 3 7/8 is 3 7/8 inches is the crown height on this hat. So a low crown height pork pie. But just the fact that it has the crown height listed prominently between the block number and the size tells me, based on the knowledge that I gained from the hatprofessor.com, that this is a hat from the 50s, right? Because during the 60s, Hat Corporation of America stopped printing the crown heights on their hats, on their labels. They just standardized on that. I don't know the exact reason. Some speculate that Crown Heights, the information, not Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Shout out to Brooklyn and Crown Heights, but Crown Heights became something that didn't matter as much for consumers, and they just stopped printing it on the label. Again, anybody that knows more than that can opine on that. But that was kind of like, that sealed the deal. That was like, okay, I had a suspicion based on that hat label, like the size label, right? I meant the font, that this was from the 50s or maybe even earlier. But at very least it was 60s. Either way, I didn't care. I liked it. And you can see even the original price was $12.95. $12.95 bought you home in the 1950s. This very, very elegant, very cool looking pork pie hat. What I don't know is whether that rope, that Western rope, was something that really came with the hat, or somebody that owned it between the 1950s and when I became an owner a few years ago, where that came with a ribbon, like I really wanted, and then maybe the ribbon faded or broke or whatnot, and they just replaced it with a kind of a groovy looking rope, and more Western style. Like, again, the hat was originally done for somebody in Utah. Maybe that made sense, right? But somebody in Utah in the 1950s, they were probably wearing maybe a more Western style. I don't know. I can only speculate at this point. But I believe that'll be the end of my my slideshow, and I hope you guys enjoyed that, man. So here, the story was, I went into in as much detail as I could for today. The Dunlap Supreme, a brand that, again, you just won't find it as often. A Hat Corporation of America mainstay. Apparently, what I learned and what we all learned together is that Dunlap was pretty much one of the anchors and on the high end of the Hat Corporation of America brand list, right? So essentially, you had Knox and Dunlap going hand in hand, and then at the apex, you had Kavanaugh, which was, I guess, predated by Crowfoot and Knapp. Hopefully, I pronounced that correct. Shout out to Hat Corporation of America. Shout out to B&B Clothes Shop, and shout out to the Benowitz family, from the past, and the Benowitz family that still exists. If you watch this or you come across this and you happen to know the Benowitz family, please drop a comment, or something that even if you're just from Utah and you think it's cool. I want to know about it. I want to hear from it. Yeah, wow. I made it. I'm just under 2 minutes, just under 2 hours here live streaming. I'm hoping that you enjoyed the show today. And I think this is just going to be a good time to close out the show. Thank you for spending your morning with me. Shout out to Ian and shout out to Morgan for spending their morning with me. And I hope you have a great day. And this is Luke shouting out, bringing you and closing Hat Chat number 17. And hopefully I'll do another one tomorrow. But until then, this is Luke signing off and asking you, please stay hatting, my friend. Ciao.